Hey, good evening. I want to welcome everyone here tonight to our class. We're just beginning the book of Revelation, and we will be kind of starting out with a different, little bit different lesson tonight, rather than just going through the verses and so forth. I wanted to do something a little bit different. Let's go ahead and start with the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with his commands and commands us to engross ourselves in the words of Torah. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone so we eliminate any background noise. And okay, yeah, so get this. All right, I think I've got all my electronics taken care of here tonight, so we'll go ahead and get started. Tonight we're going to be looking at Daniel, or a book of Revelation. I'm so used to saying Daniel. And before we get into the book itself, I wanted to give you a little bit of a overview of Revelation, and then compare it to some of Jewish apocalyptic literature. I think it's important to look at Revelation in the context in which in which it was written, and also as a part of a genre of Jewish literature. Now, there are at least, I don't know, a dozen or more books. I just listed about 15, I think, of apocalyptic literature that was written starting, somewhere around the 225 BCE and endings right around where Revelation was written, and around 100 CE. And that it would all qualify as apocalyptic literature. And so the book of Revelation falls toward the end of this 300-year span, as written in 95 CE, current era, and the author is widely believed to be the Apostle John, who also wrote the Gospel of John in 1st and 2nd and 3rd John. And he saw his vision on the island of Patmos. He was exiled there, and here is a map of Patmos, and you can see here where it is, off the coast of Turkey, actually closer to Turkey than it is to Greece. But I think it is a Greek island today. So now, first of all, we're going to look at 4 approaches as to how we in the Western world, or maybe the mainstream Christian world or something, how they view a revelation. And I'm going to describe each one of them and give you some examples of that. So the first one that we're going to look at is the preterist view. Now, in the preterist view, this approach believes that Revelation dealt only with the church in John's day. In the preterist approach, Revelation doesn't predict anything. John simply described events of his current day, but he put it in a symbolic code so that those outside the Christian family couldn't understand his criticism of the Roman government. And in this preterist view, the book of Revelation was just for then. It was that time frame and no more. And then there is the symbolic approach, and sometimes it's called the poetic view. And this approach avoids trying to nail down anything in Revelation as to specific events or persons or dates or anything like that. So, why would they do that? Why is that? Well, prophecy can be kind of enigmatic. It's it's definitely difficult sometimes, and then it's almost always controversial. If you try to go out there and predict something and it's prophetic, then there's always going to be people that would want to shoot darts at you. Now this, I don't know, this approach here, this symbolic approach, I would call it a squishy view, because it's like, don't step out on a limb, don't say anything that get anybody too wound up, and many people view this approach, that it was written for the people in John's day as an encouragement and comfort for persecuted Christians. Revelation is seen as a symbolic teaching about the cosmic battle between good and evil. But then everything is in code and symbols and so forth. So it's everybody can have an opinion, I guess, but nothing is concrete. There's nothing in this symbolic approach that we could call that you could really nail down and call it concrete. The next one is the historicist view. And again, on these things that I'm these four views that I'm talking about, or approaches, some are similar, but the names, they could be called other things too. But anyway, that's the names that I gave them anyway. The historicist view is similar to the preterist view in some cases. The historicist looks at Revelation as a sweeping, disordered panorama of all church history. In the historicist approach, Revelation predicts the future, but it's the future of the church age and not the future of end time events. It's not eschatological at all. In the historicist view, Revelation is full of symbols, but the symbols, they describe things as it's now. And so they don't really look at this as being too predictive. Now, in this example, if you went back to the reformers, Martin Luther and those guys back in that time when they were breaking away from the Catholic Church, they called the Pope the beast of Revelation chapter 13. But they didn't necessarily want to believe that the end was near. So they picked and chose what to emphasize. So they believed that the Revelation spoke of their time without necessarily going that next step and speaking of end times. But we still have people today that in their view of Revelation and the beasts and all that kind of stuff, that it's the Pope and it's Catholicism. And if you get on, it doesn't take you very long of getting on the internet to find those kind of views. And I'd been in my upbringing, I had heard that one too, that it was the papacy that was going to be the Antichrist and so forth. So, but there again, coming from a Christian background, a mainstream Christian background where Catholicism was certainly not something that was to be followed, believed, or anything. So that was a view of a lot of the people that would come around our churches and talk about Revelation, and so I grew up with that. And I need to stay with my my slides here. So let's go with to the next one, to the futurist. The last view is to study Revelation very, very carefully, so that one can know in advance precisely what's going to happen and how it will occur. Now, of course, as you can imagine, there are various interpretations of prophetic writings, which they would result in a number of end time and future scenarios that for the futurist, Revelation is seen as an exact description of literal events that will occur sometime in the future. Now, this it's not uncommon, I guess, for a person's approach to Revelation to have a blend maybe of all of these different views, a little bit here and there, but I'm sure that much of what I've described and will describe tonight won't fit exactly into your view of what Revelation is, but that's okay. We'll just take the parts that apply to you, how you view it, and we'll go from there. The future view, this futurist view, in my opinion, now this is my opinion, is it's the most common approach to Revelation today. It seems like that this approach, kind of edges out all the other ones in the popular imagination. And all you need to do is kind of look at books and movies and get on the internet and see what people are absolutely fascinated with the future. Looking at just some of the stuff that's been going on in just recent times in some of the movies. I think most of us have seen, we've seen this series back here, the Left Behind series of books and movies. I've started reading them myself. I don't know, what was it, 20, 30 years ago, whenever those things came out. And I got about halfway through and I got bored because it just there was just way too much literary license, I guess is the way I would look at it. And then more recently in the Messianic area of, that's what I'm familiar with nowadays. Not so much in what the mainstream Christian approach is, but in the Messianic movement, the blood moons seem to have just taken the place by storm. I mean, Mark Biltz wrote one book on it, and then here's John Hagee, he wrote another one, and then other people writing books on the 4 blood moons and how that the world was going to come to an end, and how that every time there was 4 blood moons in a what a tetrad they call it or whatever, that just unbelievable things happen to, or very coincidental, seemingly things happen to Israel. The only problem with it was that once they would say these things about the 4 blood moons at such and such a time in history. Well, I went back and being the skeptic that I am, I went back and researched some of these things, and let's just say that the authors that pulled up these blood moon things were very economical with their dates and so forth, or creative, maybe is a better word, with their dates. That for me, a blood moon is, I mean, you can go back and you can find when these so-called blood moon phenomenon, when it happened. I mean, you can go back a couple of thousand years and pinpoint it to the exact date as to when it occurred. And by the same token, you can also go forward and do that, predict it, what's going to be the blood moons for the next 2,000 years. So to me, that's like it's almost like saying that the sun is going to come up tomorrow, and that means that X or Y or whatever, because the sun is going to come up tomorrow. And come on, that's it just didn't it didn't do anything for me. And so these people that are future oriented, they like these end time scenarios that that they're say the Armageddon thing, or they'll come up with all sorts of different schemes and scenarios and that are going to happen in the future. And then there's people that are more prophecy oriented. That I'm on several what deals on the internet where it prophecy and because I like to just kind of see what people are saying. And a lot of these folks that they look at prophecy as being fulfilled in everything that's in the news. You see it just runs rampant every time that there's a presidential election. They'll go through and this you saw it in 2008. That Obama was going to be the best thing since Bluebell ice cream. And then Trump comes along and they've got all sorts of these numbers of this is the year 5777. Trump will be 70 and on this whatever, and it just went on and on and on. And so that's where prophecy-oriented people are, what they do. And then there's also the detail-oriented folks that, again, they're kind of like the futurists that, they look at everything in Revelation that's got to have a precise meaning to it, and so some of the stuff in Revelation, it may very well be allegory, and we just don't know it at that point, at this point in our lives. So, but anyway, anytime that something like these, these left behind things in the 4 blood moons and all this other stuff comes up, I think it behooves each one of us to look at it, get into the scriptures, test it, and just see, okay, is this guy, is he full of hot air, or is there something to this, or what's the deal here? Big name authors, pastors and television personalities, those guys can get it wrong too sometimes. So just look it up for yourself. And those of you that are in the sound of my voice in the Houston area, next Saturday I'm going to be bringing something about the sin sacrifice, sin offerings. That I learned something this morning. I was studying and I came across something. I'm not going to give it away, but you can read it on our I'll post it on our website after the service next week. But I learned something because I'm digging into the scriptures, and it totally turned over something that I've been taught all my life. So I've got to where people are asking me to post my sermons on Facebook and on the website. So I'll be putting those out. But it's going to be interesting next week talking about the sin offering. But you got to get into the Word, and you got to study that stuff, because every once in a while you might find a nugget. So let's if you've been following our Torah study, you know that we just completed a study of the book of Daniel, and there are other books too that kind of point to they have end time prophecies and so forth, like Ezekiel and maybe portions of Isaiah. Now we know that those were prophetic books at the time, and that a lot of Isaiah was fulfilled in the coming of Yeshua and his sacrifice, so forth. But there's also still some stuff that in Ezekiel and Isaiah that they haven't happened yet. So we're still looking forward to those, and so we're going to get into some of these other text here. But before I do, I'm going to go ahead and open it up if there's anybody that's got any questions so far about what I've said. So everybody is unmuted if you got something that you want to have a question about or something. So otherwise, just write it down in the chat and we'll try to pick it up there. Okay, any comers? Okay, nothing, huh? All right, so I'm going to go back to the script here. All right, now there are, as I said, there's many other extra biblical books, and they were written between the 3rd century BCE and the 2nd century of the current era, about a 300-year span, a little bit more than 300-year span. And these books, we call them apocalyptic books. They resemble the book of Revelation. Now, these books are non-canonical, meaning that they're outside the Bible. They were not included as part of the Bible. They were not even included as part of the canon or as the Bible say, for instance, Yeshua and Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, all those guys, the disciples, they would not have looked at these books that we're talking about here tonight as canon, okay, as part of the Bible. But they, even though we look and judge them to be not divinely inspired, as it were, they are sometimes historically accurate, and they often portray the worldview of the people that of the day where they were written in, that time frame, so that you get a little bit different view. Now, they provide good reference points for features of the genre, the terminology, the methodology of the ancient writers themselves, and they fill in the gaps, and they kind of help interpret the message of a Revelation. Unfortunately, most interpreters of Revelation completely ignore these books. They and I don't know, it's a variety of reasons why they would do that, and perhaps they reject them because they're not part of the Bible. I've had people tell me that, if in their Bible studies, if it's not in the Bible, then they don't need it. And okay. But maybe they're just unaware of the existence, because to tell you the truth, if you're brought up in some kind of religious traditions, a lot of this stuff is just never taught. It's completely outside your scope of learning. And then even if they did know them, then some people don't know how to really access the books, and let's face it, some of them are not even translated that well. So anyway, these books are interesting, and I think in my study for my classes and sermons and so forth, I use extra biblical books a good bit to give me an idea of what was going on inside the head of the person that's writing the book that's in the Bible, or give me some historical background. I read Josephus a lot, just so that I could get an idea of what was going on in the Jewish world at the time that whatever book was being written in the Bible. Other historians that I read, because it gives me a background. So there's really nothing that you just got to understand where these things are coming from. Look at them, and pick the pieces that will benefit you and maybe give you some insight. Now, this as far as an example, okay, first book of Enoch right here. I've got it listed here. Now, this book was written in 225 BCE, and it tells about how Enoch was taken up into heaven and shown many things. Now, obviously, it was written in 225 BCE, so it was not written by Enoch, okay, because Enoch was like the grandfather of Noah or something like that. I mean, he was long way back. So, and we know that the story goes that he said that the Bible said that he didn't how does that say that he went? He basically he didn't die. He just God took him, and Enoch is up in heaven, or he's with God right now, but he never did die. And so anyway, and we'll look at that later on when we get into more things into Revelation. But if you look at the text of Enoch, and then you look at some of the things that are in Revelation, the similarities between Enoch, this first book of Enoch, and Revelation are just stunning. And it kind of appears that that whoever the writer, John, the writer of Revelation, John was, yeah, he might have been a big fan of Enoch, or certainly he was aware of that literature of that book, and he had probably read it. The book of Enoch is one of the most important non-canonical apocryphal works, and probably had a huge influence on the early Christian, especially Gnostic beliefs. Now, it's filled with all sorts of visions of heaven and hell and angels. Now, Enoch introduced some of the thoughts that we have today in Christianity, the concept, some of our concepts of the fallen angels, the appearance of a Messiah, the resurrection, a final judgment, and a heavenly kingdom on earth. Things that, they're kind of just in the Bible, they're mentioned in such a cursory view or wording that we have to kind of fill in the blanks a little bit sometimes on some of our theology. So the book of Enoch, brings some of that stuff up, and it tells us a little bit about what was going on in the Jewish mindset at that time, a couple of hundred years before Yeshua. So the book of Jubilees, that's also a very important book. And now it's more concerned. Even though it's predictive, it's got a few predictive things in it, but it's more concerned with wisdom, and it has a lot of writing about ethics and behavior and so forth. Interesting book of Jubilees. And the Sibylline oracles, also written about 150 years before Yeshua. It's kind of a predictive, a prophetic thing, and same with the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs. Now that was written, in 100 years before Yeshua. Now, again, obviously, the 12 Patriarchs it wasn't written by them, but they attribute it to them, and so forth. So Psalms of Solomon, same kind of thing. It's more a kind of a little bit of predictive stuff, but a lot of wisdom kind of things. And let's see, I got a couple others here, a few other ones here that we look at. I mean, a lot of these things, if you just go through them, you can actually find these things if you were interested. You can find them online. They're obviously public domain, and you can look these things up. Some of the reading is pretty interesting. And let's go ahead, and I want to give you some examples of some of the apocalyptic literature that's out there. Now, the word apocalypse, we've kind of made the Greek take a right turn or a left turn or something like that, but the apocalyptic apocalypse means a revealing. Now, a lot of times when we think of apocalypse, we think of disaster and so forth, but the Greek word actually means a revealing, whereas apocryphal, which were the books that we didn't include in the canon, that has a connotation in Greek of hidden, or more of a secretive thing. So and we'll talk about that next week, actually, when we get into the actual the first few verses and tear that apart. We'll talk more about what is apocalypse. Now, in this fourth book of Ezra, in chapter 5, let's go ahead and we'll read that. It says, "Behold, the days are coming when those who dwell on earth shall be seized with great terror, and the way of truth shall be hidden, and the land shall be barren of faith, and the sun shall suddenly shine forth at night, and the moon during the day." That kind of sounds familiar with some of the things in Revelation, doesn't it? "Blood shall drip from wood, and the stone shall utter its voice. The people shall be troubled, and the stars shall fall." Um, Again, the imagery that pops into your head here kind of sounds like Revelation in many ways. We go on to 4th Ezra chapter 11. It says, "On the second night I had a dream, and behold, there came up from the sea an eagle that had 12 feathered wings and 3 heads. And I looked, and behold, on the right side one wing rose, and it rained over all the earth. And while it was raining, it came to its end and disappeared, so that its place was not seen. Then the next wing rose and rained, and it continued to rain a long time. And while it was raining, its end came also, so that it disappeared like the first." This kind of imagery, again, looks a lot like what we saw in Daniel, where the beasts came up from the sea, and he could describe most of the beasts in terms of some kind of an animal or some kind of an animal part. So that's in the fourth Ezra and 11. And let's go ahead with another so a few verses in this 4th chapter, or 11th chapter of 4 Ezra, the 4th book of Ezra. And it says, "And I looked, and behold, a creature like a lion was aroused out of the forest, roaring. And I heard how he uttered a man's voice to the eagle, and spoke, saying, The Most High says to you, Are you not the one who remains of the 4 beasts which I had made to reign in my world, so that the end of my times might come through them? You will surely disappear, you eagle, and your terrifying wings, so that the whole earth, freed from your violence, may be refreshed and relieved." Sounds a lot, if you weren't really familiar with the Revelation, you might look at that and say, "Ooh, wow, that's some of that Revelation stuff there." And so anyway, these books, they speak about beasts, and they represent nations and how they interact with Israel. So at the time when John wrote his book of Revelation, Christianity didn't exist on its own, in its own organized entity, or even as a separate religion. They were still meeting in the synagogues when John wrote Revelation. So Revelation is a work of Jewish apocalyptic tradition, reflecting the spirituality of these, what do they call them? The Nazarenes, the Nazarene followers, or we could call them Christ followers from the Second Temple period. And Revelation should be read with that in mind. Now, the interpretations of the book of Revelation, they take it far beyond the world of John's contemporaries. They could not even imagine what we're looking at in Revelation today. So some of these things that we see in the context of where we are living today, we see it in probably a much, or most definitely in a much different light than what they saw it. So let's look at a few things here with Revelation, and we'll look at Revelation as a heavenly message. Now, when John wrote here, let's look at Revelation 1 and the first 2 verses. "The revelation of Yeshua, the Messiah, which God gave him to show to his servants the things that must soon take place. He made it known by sending his angel to his servant John, who testified to the word of God and to the testimony of Yeshua, the Messiah, to everything he saw." Now, Jewish apocalyptic tradition, which Revelation is a part, They have an accepted way to introduce the text to the reader or to the hearer, and it explains who is giving the revelation, to whom, the reason for it, and what it means. All of the apocalyptic books kind of seem to fall into this pattern right at the beginning of who's giving the revelation, and to whom, or who's it for, what's the reason of it, and then what it means. Those four aspects of it. If you look at now, that's what John said in Revelation. Okay, now this is what Enoch said in this book of Enoch, first chapter, first 2 verses. The words of the blessing of Enoch. Who's given it? Enoch. How he blessed the elect and the righteous who were to exist in the time of trouble, rejecting all the wicked and ungodly. Enoch, a righteous man who was with God, answered and spoke while his eyes were open and while he saw a holy vision in the heavens. This the angel showed me. From them I heard all things and understood what I saw, that which will not take place in this generation, but in a generation which is to succeed at a distant period on account of the elect. So here he is. He's telling who it was that's giving it, how he came by it, and who it's for, and for what reason, on the account of the elect. So you see that same kind of pattern there. Baruch, in the book of Baruch, he said, I saw an angel of the Lord coming and saying to me, again, here's an angel of the Lord telling him, understand, O man, greatly beloved. Remember that greatly beloved was also language we saw in Daniel. And trouble not thyself so greatly concerning the salvation of Jerusalem. For thus saith the Lord God, the Almighty, for he sent me before thee to make known and to show thee all things. And the angel of the powers said to me, come and I will show thee the mysteries of God. So again, kind of an explanation of why he's given this book and what it's for and who it's for. So we see Revelation. It's a heavenly message. It's something that is coming from the heavens. It's not dissimilar from the other books of the Apocalypse. Now, here's one that I don't know if it's going to show up very well, but Revelation is kind of a poetry and wisdom. Now, we're looking at 7 blessings in Revelation, and they start out in the beginning of Revelation. And I don't know if you have ever heard of what is called a chiasm before. Now, this is a Jewish literary structure. Now, these I'm going to read these. Look at this blessing here. It says, let me move my some of this stuff around here on my screen because I can't see the what I'm writing here. It says, Revelation 1:3, how fortunate is the one who reads the words of this prophecy and those who hear and keep what has been written in it. So there's a blessing there. How fortunate, or how blessed, for the time is near. Now, this verse here is the summary statement for all the 7 blessings in Revelation. The other 6 blessings occur in a chiastic pattern that's scattered out throughout the entire book. Normally, chiastic patterns will show up within just a couple of verses, but in Revelation, this thing covers out throughout the entire book. And a chiasm is built on Hebrew poetic parallelism and moves from outside statements to the inside of the book in a predictive fashion. So at times, John Revelation has a poetic structure reminiscent of the prophets. So you see this in the prophets. Now, here I think I've got it written down here, and hopefully you can see the pattern. And I'm going to get, well, let's see if I can do a highlighter or a spotlight. Let's do the spotlight here. so that we can kind of show you. All right, you see here where blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors and their works follow. So blessed are the dead who die in the Lord. All right, now you'll see that this is kind of out here. Well, then it starts at 14:13. Well, then as we go further into Revelation, you'll see another blessing. Behold, I am coming as a thief. Blessed is he who watches and keeps his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. Now that is in Revelation 16:15, so it comes later on in the book. And then finally, we get down to this middle blessings here. Blessed are those who are called to the marriage supper of the Lamb. Revelation 19:19. Then the next blessing, blessed and holy is he who has part in the first resurrection. It's walking its way back at this point. But notice that you've got an A prime and an A1, A2, B1, B2. And so we come back to B2 here. It says, behold, I am coming quickly. Blessed is he who keeps the words of the prophecy of this book. And that's Revelation 22:7. The final blessing is, blessed are those who obey his commandments, that they may have the right to the tree of life and may enter through the gates. Generally speaking, a chiasm, and it doesn't show up really well on here because I just don't have the room to do it. But a chiasm would say it would start out at your top left-hand corner of whatever your page is, and it works its way down at an angle to where you have the central points of the poetry, or in this case the blessings, and then it works its way back. So it's a parallel. You got a blessing A1 and a blessing A2, a blessing B2, a B1, and a blessing B2. C1, C2, and that, some of these things they'll have maybe 7 or 8 of these A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then going on back to the beginning. But they're kind of fascinating the way that these things will manifest themselves, and how you see that in Jewish literature. One of my courses that I had on taking just reading Jewish literature had a lot of these chiastic forms, and if anybody's interested in it, let me know, and I'll try to dig up some more examples of some of these chiastic forms. But anyway, that again is it's a structure that you see in Revelation. There are quite a few other of the chiastic things in Revelation. One for judgments and so forth. So we may get into that a little bit more as we go into the course. But this the stuff, to me, it's pretty interesting. But then I'm kind of nerdy, so we'll go on and talk about the Alpha and Omega in Revelation. Now, in Revelation 1 and let's see if I got before I leave that chiastic thing. Yeah, okay, that I finished up all my notes on that. Okay, the Alpha and Omega in Revelation, it says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, says Adonai Elohim, who is and who was and who is to come, the Almighty. So what I did here is I wrote out on the left-hand side, you got an Alpha and Omega in Greek. That's the beginning of the Greek alphabet and the end of the Greek alphabet. And then over on the right-hand side, I've got the Aleph Tav in the Hebrew alphabet. So that's the Aleph is the beginning of the alphabet. Tav is the end. So it's when Yeshua is saying, I am the Alpha and the Omega. Well, here it says, I'm the Alpha and the Omega. It says Adonai Elohim. Okay, let's go ahead. And then then it's kind of clear there. So that who is saying that he's the Alpha and Omega? Says the Almighty God. There's even a hint to God's very special name there. In Hebrew, this name appears to have connection with the verb to be. The I am. We go back to it where it says who was, who is, and is to come. That's that gets into the Hebrew where it's the verb to be, meaning always was, I'm here, and I always will be. It's just the being, to be. So when we hear someone say who was and is and will be, it becomes clear that this is talking about God, who is eternal. But is it always that clear? Here we go to Revelation and 22:12 and 16. Behold, I am coming soon. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. I, Yeshua, have sent my angel to testify these things to you for my communities. I am the root and the offspring of David, the bright and morning star. Whoa, wait a minute. What happened here? Here Yeshua is speaking, and apparently he's the Alpha and the Omega. So which will it be, Yeshua or Adonai Elohim, the Lord God? In Revelation, Yeshua is shown in the grandest terms reserved for God alone. He is powerful. He has victory, but not merely a mighty angel. There is an aura of divinity about him. Yet he is also shown as distinct from the Lord God Almighty. Okay, so he's still powerful. He's there, but it's still a distinction between him and God the Father. These statements must be read not against later Trinitarian theology, harmonizing them, with their later dogma, but against the background of Jewish apocalyptic Son of Man traditions. And I think when we were doing Daniel, we talked about that a little bit about when it talks about the Son of Man, that's talking about a deity. When they're talking about the Son of God, then maybe it's not talking about deity. It could be talking about just the people of Israel. Could be talking about a king. It could be talking about many things, but it's just one of those quirks of Hebrew language and Hebrew literature. Now, in the Jewish literature of that area, the Son of Man appears to have a divine status, maybe it's a second power, maybe it's a little bit lesser power in their view, but one of the words that they use in the Jewish literature is that he's the Metatron, and I can't go into all of that stuff tonight because it's just too much. But anyway, this concept of the lesser power, they don't explain it. They don't go into it like how that later on in the Christian tradition they just try to dissect and define and understand this idea of the triune God, or the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And so this is why some of the Jews in the Second Temple period actually believed in a second deity. So there were two powers in heaven. It was kind of the Father, Son. Remember back in Daniel where the Ancient of Days came and gave power and authority to the younger one. And so that kind of language is kind of hard to understand. So a lot of Jewish writers, they just kind of they go on to something else. So the deity of the ancient days, the Son of Man, is explicit and yet not harmonized in ancient Jewish literature. I mean, it's all over the place. And if I could make a recommendation, if you want some real heavy, interesting reading on this, pick up the book by Rabbi Itzhak Shapira. It's called The Return of the Kosher Pig. Many of you have heard me talk about it. It's not easy to understand, but if you could ever get a grasp of it, it will really kind of give you a much better idea on what this idea of a Messiah, a divine Messiah. It was all over Jewish literature for the last 3,000 years, and yet a lot of the rabbis have just refused to accept that. But that idea was out there for many years. Okay, finally, let's sum it up tonight because we're running out of time. The book of Revelation can be categorized as a prophetic book that contains poetry and wisdom material, but the primary category, I think it belongs to Jewish apocalyptic literature. It's also a letter to real people going through real hardships with a true and real message of hope. In the Jewish community, apocalyptic books were written in the darkest of times and always with the purpose of providing readers hope in the midst of trouble. The heavenly visions revealed the future and the presently at that time the presently hidden world. Where in the end times God wins, the righteous are vindicated and the wicked are all punished. That's just a commonality of apocalyptic literature in the Jewish tradition. The visions of the strange creatures, the symbolism, the cryptic poetry, the imagery of heavenly battles, and unseen events, all that is meant to inspire hope for for the reader or the hearer, whoever it is. And even though they may sound like they're terrible on the surface, God has not abandoned his people, nor will he abandon his people, and salvation is coming. And so this can all be seen in John's revelation here. It's a Jewish apocalypse. So the best way to read and understand Revelation is to consider the precise historical hardship of the very community to whom it was addressed. Okay, we've got to look at it in context of who it was written to at that time, but at the same time, no doubt any generation of Yeshua followers, any generation, will find comfort in the words, but John wrote to comfort his contemporaries. Other Jewish books of similar genre should help, but don't get lost up in the symbolism. So, in a way, we got to look at Revelation in that John was writing to people of his day, and yet it's like in Daniel where there was this message flowing here, and just parallel to it, there was also a predictive message that had not taken place at the time of Daniel. So anyway, that's the lesson for tonight, and I'm going to go ahead and open it up for anybody. If you've got any comments or questions,